Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Developing a Proper Worldview. This is going to be episode number 71, and I'm going to keep the introduction short. I figure if you've watched this many of them, you already know the whole spiel. But we're currently in part 4 of our series, looking at the 9/11 conspiracy, and we've already watched a couple of documentaries on that. We're on our third one, which is 9/11 Road to Tyranny, and we're about 45 minutes or so into it. So I'll just say, if you happen to be catching this video randomly, these are done in sequential order. So I highly recommend that you go back and watch from the beginning. It's very, very important that you have a biblical foundation laid before you start to look into these things. You have to understand the scriptures, understand that the entire New World Order conspiracy, Illuminati, all that stuff, it's a biblical thing. It's a kingdom of darkness versus the kingdom of light. And these events were prophesied by God, and you have to have that proper understanding so that you can look at the world and understand what's really going on from the biblical perspective. Without any further ado, let's jump into it and pick up where we left off. All right, here we go.
You've seen the evidence of government-sponsored terrorism throughout history. Now let's take a closer look at what happened on September 11th, 2001, and how it's being used to usher in a new world order.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace
What a
and security,
coincidence
freedom,
that he gave that speech
and the rule
on
of
September
law.
11th.
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge. Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
The Council on Foreign Relations, known as the CFR, an organization publicly sworn to destroy American national sovereignty and usher in a tyrannical world police state, could not contain their glee on September 12th, the day after the tragic attack. They announced their new world order.
There is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a new world order.
Why would he say that unless he's obviously trying to deceive people? Oh, this phrase is never used. His father only used it once. Whatever. They all use it all the time. It's the beast system. They're trying to set up a one world government. That's what they mean when they say new world order.
There it is, the CFR actually admitting that this crisis was helping them to bring in a new world order, global government. And how would they get that job done? You see, for decades, going back to Jimmy Carter and Brzezinski, the national security advisor, they had been breeding, creating these terrorist organizations, funding them and training them to attack America. Brzezinski, co-founder of the Trilateral Commission with David Rockefeller and other luminaries of the global system, actually bragged in his 1998 book, these criminals love to brag, The Grand Chessboard.
So I don't really understand what the function really is of all these different New World Order organizations that they have. The Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, which if you go to their website, their symbol is a rider on a pale horse. That ought to remind everybody of the Bible. And it's really small, but I think if you zoom in, it looks like it's a naked man riding the pale horse, and he's throwing up the devil horns. And then it's got some words in it too, some Latin. I forget exactly what that means, but their objective is to merge the United States into world government. That's their stated goal, and it seems like they're really the strong arm within American politics. whether it's right or left. That's why the whole right-left paradigm is all a scheme. Regardless of whether it's Republican or Democrat, they're getting their marching orders when it comes to the world empire from the CFR. That's why I always say it's like two managing systems underneath one owner. Yeah, each one might have a little bit different managing style. The Republican style tends to focus more on foreign policy, a little bit more aggressive in the foreign policy. The Democratic style is more totalitarianism within the borders. It's more about socialism and taking control of here. But in both cases, they advance the Federal Reserve System, our military might worldwide. On those things, they're unified because those are the goals of the CFR. And so the CFR is like really the head think tank, I think, where a lot of these New World Order schemers get together and issue mandates to senators and presidents and whatnot. Then in Europe they have a similar organization, the Royal Institute of Affairs, I think is what it's called. And then you have the Bilderberg Group, which seems to be more on the corporate scheme of things, integrating corporate fascism in with the government. But it's a worldwide. It's CEOs and politicians getting together and scheming how they can advance the New World Order system. And then you have the Trilateral Group, which I don't know a ton about. It seems like it's similar to the Bilderberg, but it's called Tri because it's America, Great Britain, and Japan. So it's a trilateral commission, another organization to advance the New World Order. And then you have things like Skull and Bones, which is a fraternity in Yale, where they vet people to see, okay, are they in line with what we were planning here? And you've had the Bushes in that. You've had President Taft, I believe, was in that. Judges, things like that come through that. You have the Bohemian Club, which again it's a retreat, so to speak, where CEOs and politicians worldwide get together for 2 weeks in Northern California, where they say it's just like a fraternity where people get together to just relax, but they worship a 40-foot stone owl called Moloch out in the woods, and they do a ceremony called the cremation of care, which is a hardening of the conscience, a searing of the conscience, getting rid of care, getting rid of conscience, so they can do evil deeds without feeling bad about it. And it's there they scheme together too and come up with ideas and plans. It's probably more of a not like an official thing. It's kind of just let's throw some ideas around while we're out here having fun. Fun for them, occultic worship. But a lot of the New World Order agenda schemes are probably fomented there and then implemented through like CFR and Royal Institute and Trilateral and Bilderberg. And then there's organizations or groups that we never even hear about in the media. There's like different councils. There's like a council of 300 I've heard of. Probably 300 of the most powerful New World Order people. And then there's a council of 33, which is even more powerful, like the head people of the New World Order. And then there's the real Illuminati, not the pop culture Illuminati with Jay-Z and all that. That's a bunch of nonsense. The real Illuminati is 13 families. It's 13 bloodlines that are at the head of the New World Order scheme. And they're getting their orders from principalities and powers, from demonic influence, how to advance this New World Order. And then through that, they pass it on to the Council of 33, and then the Council of 33 passes it on to the Council of 300, and the Council of 300 passes it on to the CFR and the Trilateral and the Bilderberg. And there's other organizations like the Club of Rome and things like that. But you can invest. We'll touch on a lot of these, but you can also do a lot of your own independent research on these things. but they, regardless of what it is, and this is all the political sphere, there's also the religious sphere working at the same goal, working towards the same goal. The religious sphere, you again, you have other organizations, just think tanks like you do here. How can we advance things towards this one world organization? And whether it's Freemasonry or Mormonism or Catholicism, the head levels of those are Luciferians. They worship the devil, and they're advancing a cause. It's two arms of the same pyramid, two arms of the same triangle, working towards this new world order goal, this one world system, from a religious aspect and from a economic, geopolitical position. Did I have a final point there, or was I just kind of? I think it was, like I say, we're going to look into a lot of those things over time, but it might benefit you if anyone piques your interest to look into it. Each one, like I say, they might come up with, it's different managers, coming up with different ideas, different schemes of how to advance this, and then, through these think tanks, they might be talking at it from a different angle, but they're all working towards the same stated goal. And, yeah, so let's get back into this.
Of how America would be attacked by Afghan terrorists, and how global government, a war for global government, would then take place in Central Asia. How it could be used to roll out national ID cards and a global police state here in the United States. All of this being planned back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. The relationship between the CIA and the Afghan freedom fighters, Mujahideen, even predates Ronald Reagan. The bonds that were forged there with the Central Intelligence Agency led to the creation of their super asset, Osama bin Laden, the rich Saudi Arabian sheik whose family to this day builds all U.S. military bases in the Middle East, North Africa, and in Central Asia. It's on the record that bin Laden's a CIA asset, and every time an American president needs a distraction overseas, a ship or an embassy gets blown up. On October 12, 1998, the USS Cole, while docked at the port of Aden in Yemen, was attacked. 17 Americans were killed, 39 wounded. Sacrifice yet again on the altar of globalism. Just like clockwork, every time Bill Clinton was in trouble, an embassy, a ship, a barracks was blown up. Just like Oklahoma City, the CIA asset bin Laden was delivering time and time again, and Bill Clinton was there protecting him, refusing to allow foreign countries like Sudan, even Iraq and Afghanistan, to give them the files of where Al-Qaeda was in the world, and yes, where they were active even in the continental United States. Sudan even offered to arrest bin Laden 3 separate times. Bill Clinton answered by bombing with state-of-the-art cruise missiles their only pharmaceutical plant. Denying Africa desperately needed medicines. You see, in reality, it's a lot bigger than just Republican or Democrat. The reality is the Central Intelligence Agency, controlled by Wall Street, has been grooming this creature and his family over the last 50 years to carry out dangerous projects in the Middle East, Central Asia, and North Africa. Back in 1996, the CIA worked in tandem with Pakistan to create the Taliban. Then in 1998, when the Afghans offered to arrest bin Laden, the CIA responded, publicly telling him to do no such thing. They needed this boogeyman for one more big action, and his family the entire time was being rewarded with giant satellite company deals, oil company mergers, and some of the biggest construction projects in the world.
New world coming. America will become increasingly vulnerable to hostile attack on our homeland, and our military superiority will not entirely protect us. Americans will likely die on American soil, possibly in large numbers. Americans will likely die on American soil, possibly in large numbers, possibly in large numbers, possibly in large numbers.
Shortly after September 11th, witnesses came forward documenting that bin Laden had actually met and planned the September 11th attacks with the CIA for 10 days in Dubai in an American Army hospital. French intelligence was so upset by what they had learned that they actually got media reports published before September 11th, specifically warning that bin Laden was planning to hijack aircraft and fly them into tall buildings in downtown Manhattan, as well as the Pentagon. Of course, the Pentagon, the Defense Department, didn't need to be warned. First media reports that came out said that 5 of the hijackers had been trained at the Pensacola Naval Air Station. Later media reports in the Pensacola News Journal confirmed that 3 of the hijackers had been trained at the Pensacola Naval Air Station 2 years before September 11th. The San Francisco Chronicle also reported that one of the top lieutenants of Al-Qaeda was actually an FBI asset, not to mention a member of the U.S. Army. The next piece of evidence you're about to see is the biggest smoking gun of them all. President George W. Bush signed Presidential Decision Directive W199I, telling FBI agents as well as defense intelligence officers that if they tried to stop Al-Qaeda, they would be arrested under national security implications. It's been in every publication from the Wall Street Journal to the Washington Times. Actual lawsuits have now been filed by FBI agents who are outraged by the fact that they were not allowed to stop Al-Qaeda. The global crime syndicate that George W. Bush and his family fronts for has everything to gain from the September 11th attacks. A national ID card, a national control grid, a cashless society. It's part of the public record. George Bush signed the documents threatening defense intelligence and FBI agents with arrest if they stopped Al-Qaeda. This is the most absolutely treasonous, treacherous thing he could possibly do. George Bush is a mass murderer. Before the Bush administration shut him down, CNN's American Morning with Paula Zahn actually reported that FBI Deputy Director John O'Neill resigned because he felt the U.S. administration was obstructing the FBI and their attempt to stop Al-Qaeda. They went on to report that Bush signed W199I, restricting the investigation. Again, this is high treason, absolute fact. George Bush signed this public document. BBC has a copy of it, and George Bush is an intimate partner with bin Laden, a traitor to America. Months before September 11, 2001, Indian as well as Pakistani diplomats had gone public with the fact that U.S. Special Forces were massing in Tajikistan, preparing for a full-scale invasion of Afghanistan. So the U.S. government was massing troops outside Afghanistan, publicly getting ready for an invasion right before September 11th. Another smoking gun, another red flag. We already talked about the Deputy FBI Director, John O'Neill, quitting because George Bush signed an order not allowing him to stop Al-Qaeda. You're probably wondering, why doesn't he go public now? Well, there's a problem. Mr. O'Neill is dead. His new job was working as the head of security for the World Trade Center complex, and he died in the collapse of September 11th, his first day on the job.
That's crazy.
The Bush and bin Laden family connection goes back over half a century, and by the 1970s, George Bush Jr. as well as Osama bin Laden and his big brother were already vacationing together, owning airports as well as oil companies together. Even before September 11th, the Wall Street Journal had called for the Bush family to end their relationship with the bin Ladens. Then, of course, there's the Carlyle Group, the biggest defense contractor on the planet. And guess who the majority owners are? The Bush family and the bin Ladens. They can profit in the hundreds of billions off of this new war. Now you begin to understand what's fueling these criminal activities. Money and power. Dozens of respected publications have asked a simple question.
It's crazy that, the Bush family is so wicked. Prescott Bush, the grandpa of George W., was involved with the Nazis. His companies here in America were doing business with the Nazis during World War II. George Bush Sr. Is one of the more wicked people that I've come across. He was in the CIA when the Kennedy assassination happened, and he's got ties with that, ties with I think the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and things like that. And then when he was president, he was all gung-ho about the New World Order, tried to take over Iraq back then. And these guys are just like mid-management guys. I just thought of a good analogy. It's like George Bush Sr. just happened to be a really zealous guy for the New World Order. He was completely sold out to it. But he's really not anybody pulling strings. It's like a football team that gets a really good quarterback. That's what George Bush Sr. was. You know, he's a really good quarterback. He's out there leading the charge, but he's not really doing anything corporately. The owner, that quarterback still has a coach, and that coach has a general manager, and that general manager has an owner. So that there's level, like he's the public face. He's leading. He's the big cheerleader, and he's making plays for the organization, and the organization is very happy with him. But he's also easily replaceable, and that's what your politicians are. That's what your Bushes and your Clintons and your Bidens and your Obamas. That's what they are. They're just public faces. They're cheerleaders for the organization, but behind them there's a coach, which I would say would be like the CFR, and behind the CFR there's general managers, which would be your council of 300 or your council of 33, and then there's your owners, which are the bloodline families, the DuPonts, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, things like that.
What brought those buildings down, especially Building 7 that wasn't even hit by an aircraft? Lou Caccioli, a 51-year-old firefighter in New York who was trapped inside the building, reported that multiple bombs were going off all around him. There are other eyewitnesses, former military munitions experts and police officers, as well as structural engineers. The oldest firefighting magazine in the country was absolutely outraged, demanding a real investigation. According to their evidence, there's no way that aircraft could have brought down those buildings. And don't forget Building 7, nothing hit Building 7, but still it collapsed in a symmetrical fashion. The September 12, 2001 San Francisco Chronicle reported that Mayor Willie Brown was warned by the federal government not to fly on September 11th. He was warned the evening before. Now, of course, under pressure from the White House, Willie Brown refuses to say exactly what federal agency warned him, just that he was warned not to fly on September 11th. I wish the rest of the American people would have gotten that warning.
I've heard somewhere that call was traced to the White House, and that it even specifically was traced back to Condoleezza Rice. I don't remember where I heard that,
But of course, if the American people would have been warned, then the government terrorist attack wouldn't have had its desired effect, to have the people begging for a nightmare global police state. On September 3rd, Salman Rushdie, author of the Satanic Verses, got a warning from the U.S. authorities not to fly. They went so far as to ban him publicly from flying, and the FAA admits they did it on the record. More chilling evidence of the U.S. government's prior knowledge. But you're saying, hey, wait a minute, what was that whole war about? We went in there and took out the Taliban. No, they escorted a couple hundred goat herders to torture them publicly at Camp X-Ray in Guantanamo Bay. The real leadership of Al-Qaeda and Taliban, the few that were left in Afghanistan when the war started, were flown out to safety and paid in gold bars in Pakistan by the U.S. federal government.
here we are 20 plus years later, and the Taliban and Al-Qaeda still exist. Like, we didn't do anything. We just took over the area. We integrated those sections of the Middle East into the New World Order system, took over their national resources, and destabilized their entire country.
Here's George Bush at the United Nations telling the people not to tolerate anyone that investigates these facts.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to...
Look how far we've advanced now. Now they just censor everything. It's disinformation. It's lies. They block everything, fact-checked everything. Man, we've entered into a scary time, like 1984. Like, back then, the internet was still open. You know, it was new. Now things are getting locked down. Things are under control. The flow of information is being censored.
shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
I guess it's un-American to investigate the facts. Let's just call it a conspiracy theory, especially those FBI agents that have gone public about George Bush telling him not to stop Al-Qaeda.
Conspiracy theories, conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theories.
What you're about to hear is not a Freudian slip. It's a carefully crafted speech as Bush throws it in your face about dark cults of evil gaining power off of human suffering.
The hijackers were instruments of evil who died in vain.
Look at the little
Behind them is a
smirk
cult
on
of
his
evil,
face all the time.
which seeks to harm the innocent and thrives on human suffering. Theirs is the worst kind of cruelty. The cruelty that is fed, not weakened, by tears. Theirs is the worst kind of violence. pure malice while daring to claim the authority of God.
He's talking about
We
himself.
cannot fully understand the designs and power of evil. It is enough to know that evil, like goodness, exists. And in the terrorist, evil has found a willing servant. Evil has found a willing servant.
Evil has found a willing servant.
5 months before September 11th, David Shippers, the man that impeached Bill Clinton, that brought down the mob in Chicago, was actually getting investigative reporters on the O'Reilly factor warning of an impending terror attack on Lower Manhattan. We'll take you now to an exclusive interview with David Shippers from my syndicated radio broadcast.
I began to get information concerning the Middle Eastern connection in Oklahoma City. And
we've had Colonel Craig Roberts, who was a detective working the case, on this show many times, a month before the attack, predicting one was imminent, right here on this show, and he has all that same information. They actually arrested some of these guys, and the Justice Department in '95 said release them.
That's right. And the word's out right even today that they're not allowed to touch them. The Oklahoma City police are not allowed to touch these people. And again, from what I'm understanding, they're up to something again in Oklahoma City. I don't know what it is or what their target is. But these same people are at it again.
Now, later you got it from FBI agents in Chicago and Minnesota that there was going to be an attack on Lower Manhattan.
Everybody, yeah. I mean, it's everybody, and that's what started me calling. I started calling out there. First of all, I tried to see if I could get a congressman to go to bat for me and at least bring these people out there and listen to them. I sent them information, and nobody cared. It was always, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you. Then I reached out and tried to get to the Attorney General when finally we got an Attorney General in there that I would be willing to talk to. And again, I used people who were personal friends of John Ashcroft to try and get him. One of them called me back and said, all right, I talked to him, he will call you tomorrow morning. This was like a month before the bombing. The next morning I got a call. It wasn't from Ashcroft, it was from somebody in the Justice Department.
One of his handlers.
Yeah, and I started telling him the situation. He said, well, you know, we don't start our investigations at the top. I said, I'd like to talk to the Attorney General because this is vital. And he said, we don't start our investigations at the top. Let me look into this and I'll get back to you. Well, as I sit here today, I've never heard from him.
Now, again, David Shippers, I mean, you're big in Washington. You were the top lawyer that got Clinton impeached. You're highly respected. You know the senators, the congressmen. You're calling up. You've got these FBI agents and others feeding you this information. They're being pulled off the cases. They're angry. That's even been in the news now from Minnesota and Florida and Illinois. They know what's going to happen. The Sudanese in '96 and '98 tried to arrest bin Laden for Clinton, tried to give us the names of al-Qaeda. Clinton wouldn't take it.
Didn't want any part of it.
Wouldn't touch it. So we've got all this developing. We've got police officers and FBI on the ground who know who bombed Oklahoma City. They've got them in custody with blue jogging suits and bomb-making components. They're ordered to release them. All this is unfolding. 3,500 to 5,000 Iraqi Republican Guard. We know there's a Saddam Iraqi connection here. I mean, they knew this. Why in the world, David Shippers, did they allow this to take place is the question.
I'll tell you something. This is one of the things that, to me, it is almost inconceivable that with the knowledge they had that they would turn their back. Just assume that they had investigated and gone in after the Oklahoma City bombing as they're doing now. There never would have been an attack on the trade towers. As a human being, as a former prosecutor, as a lawyer, as a guy who represents agents all over the United States, it is inconceivable to me that those bureaucrats in Washington would turn their back on the obvious for their own purposes.
And now the World Trade Center complex is absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, there's more coming.
Now, you say that from your sources, I know you represent a bunch of FBI agents that are hopping mad. You probably can't talk about the specifics. You say you're representing them. Are they getting ready to sue or something?
No, well, they're hoping to. I don't want to get them in court. I want to get them into the Intelligence Committee, somebody who can go to these, someone who has the authority and the ability to go to the FBI bureaucrats and say, butt out, we're going to do this right.
I'm sure you're aware that on History Channel, they've been reporting for years. It's now confirmed that we had prior knowledge of the Japanese attack and they allowed that to take place.
Sure.
and now you see the UN empowered, World Court empowered. Looks like the UN's going to get to take over all that oil supply there in Central Asia. The face scanning cameras were in trouble. Now they're on the fast track. This has sure brought the police state of funding.
Sure has. And I've been saying for years that once you have license, which we've had, the next step is tyranny, and it really is scary. The whole thing is scary. The American people are saying, I want to be safe. And I will, who was it, Ben Franklin said, if you give up your liberties for security, you will eventually lose both your security and your liberties.
Absolutely. What was the intel you were getting from these agents? What were they saying?
This agent here in Chicago filed the affidavit where he laid out the whole way that the money moves, the way that it's handled, how it comes out of the Middle East into the Chicago area, not only Chicago, but into the United States, how it's covered, how the operatives are covered, and then how the money gets back, how it's transferred back, and where it's kept while it's here. And that affidavit ran like 30 pages. Laid it out. And that was the only one. He had to go through hell on earth in Washington. He had to fight like a tiger. Everybody in his own bureau and in the Department of Justice was against him, and still.
Now, the FBI agents in Minnesota knew about all this and had the evidence, but they couldn't even get a wiretap or a warrant to search these guys.
Exactly.
And we're talking about some of the actual hijackers.
Exactly. And this woman that was talking to me, she had other contacts who were in naval intelligence and in other areas, and she was reporting that there was one of these terrorists that was involved or connected with the bombing in Oklahoma City was working at the Boston airport. One of a friend of mine who happens to be an agent, had information showing that there were Hamas operatives working in baggage and areas at O'Hare Airport with free access to any part of the airport. But no one would listen. Clinton and his boys didn't want the United States to realize that Flight 800 was a terrorist attack and that the Oklahoma City was a terrorist attack, because they didn't want to have to admit that the intelligence of the United States was totally destroyed.
Well, Craig Roberts says it best. They wanted to demonize the patriots, the Christians, and create this internal security force to watch Americans because, the precious Arabs, they can't do anything wrong.
That's exactly what they started. Remember, I forget what nitwit it was that came out and said, you can really blame some of the Rush Limbaughs and the talk show hosts who are fomenting this terror.
Well, that was Bill Clinton.
Clinton made that statement. And they had a handy guy in McVeigh. They had a real handy guy. I also know, and I know this through affidavits that I've read, that there were people eyeball witnesses.
That's an important thing to remember. Is ultimately their goal, the tyranny that's coming is focused on Christianity. It's God they want to get rid of. It's the morals and the ethics of biblical Christianity that they want to be rid of. After Waco, Texas, Janet Reno, the what was she, Department of Defense or Attorney General or something like that, I can't remember. But after Waco, she issued a statement that potential domestic terrorists were Christians, people who attended frequent Bible studies, people who talked about the second coming of Christ, people who gave money to Christian organizations, people who were anti-UN, people who were pro-life, people who were pro-Second Amendment, not Islamic terrorists, not the focus is never on that. It's on us. It's on Christians. And you can see the whole flow of attacks going towards that. I just saw a video here recently, just in my area here at the Mall of America, of a guy being harassed by the security guards and told that he needed to leave the mall because he's wearing a Christian shirt. And it's ridiculous. Think back to during the election nonsense. Even though the whole right-left paradigm is nonsense, but who are they censoring? Conservatives, telling people they couldn't wear MAGA hats. They had to get them off the plane if they were doing that. It's conservative Christianity, moral, ethical, biblical Christianity that's the target of this system. It's going to be a tyranny that affects everybody, but its main target is us. It wants to, and that's biblical. The Bible says that in the end, everybody's going to be required to take a mark, and if you don't have the mark, you're going to be cut off from the finance system, from the economic buying and selling system. Who is it that's not going to take the mark? It's Christians. We are the target, and we're told that it's a time of persecution, that the saints will have to be patiently endure, that many of us are going to be killed and imprisoned, and we are the enemy of this New World Order system. And that's why we have to be alert, we have to be on guard, we have to be prepared, we have to see that day approaching, we have to see all these things that are, every attack on freedom is attack on biblical Christianity. Every step towards tyranny is a step towards the New World Order system that will be anti-Christ, opposed to Christ, opposed to Christianity. So when they censor people, that's just a precursor for censoring biblical Christianity. They might be censoring conservative mega people now, but the goal is to censor biblical Christianity. And you already see that kind of on social media, where the fact checkers will blur out pictures and say they're offensive or whatever. A lot of times it's just a picture of a Bible verse or a picture of Jesus or something like that, and they blur it. It's ridiculous. But that's where we're heading. And so when we see these things coming, we're not to fear. We were told ahead of time by God that this is coming. We were told the world is going to hate you. All those who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. Timothy says that. We will suffer persecution. And that's why Jesus told us ahead of time, be prepared for this. Prepare your heart so that it doesn't catch you off guard. Be prepared to be cut off from the financial system. Be prepared to not be able to rent. Be prepared to not be able to buy groceries. Be prepared to have if you speak out, if you proclaim the gospel, which we are commanded and compelled to do. It burns in us. We can't remain silent because it's the only means of salvation. People need to hear it in order to be saved. So we will risk everything to tell people that. But be prepared for imprisonment, for torture, for death. But that's okay. Luke tells us, don't fear him who can kill the body. Fear him who, after he has killed, can throw into hell. All they can do is kill us. And Paul said to die is gain. If we die, that's just the Lord saying, okay, your mission is done. It's time to come home. And we get to enter into glory where there's no more pain, no more suffering, no more tears, no more crying. We get eternal glory. So there's nothing to fear here. We don't have to be afraid. That's very important. We learn all this stuff not to grow anxious or worried, but to be alert, to be aware, to see the times we're in, to see, okay, I need to prepare my heart. I very well could be living on the precipice of this. This could spring upon us at any moment. And every advancement of the New World Order we see is us preparing our hearts, going, okay, it's closer, it's closer, it's closer. And we're at the point where they could literally unroll or unveil the Mark of the Beast system tomorrow. Like, they have the technology. It's available. It's there. They want it. They're pushing it. They're pushing for a cashless society. They're pushing for implantable microchips. They're pushing for New World Order. They're pushing for world government. They're pushing for censoring and authoritarianism. These things are all being set up in our lifetime. We're watching it happen. So we need to be prepared to say, okay, I might have to give everything up. All my creature comforts might go away. And I need to be okay with that. And I need to proclaim the gospel. I have to tell others because it's the only way they're going to be saved from the system. The only way they're not going to take the mark is through the gospel of Jesus Christ. The only way they're going to gain eternal life is through Jesus Christ. So I need to be about my Father's business. I need to take things seriously because we live in perilous times.
Who saw the Middle Eastern man running from the scene alongside McVeigh.
And why don't the feds just release those 12 surveillance camera tapes if it's just McVeigh alone?
Those surveillance camera tapes are going to show that there was a Middle Eastern man running with him. Some of these people who gave affidavits were interviewed by the FBI during the course of the investigation. They were interviewed about the second person they saw, and the agents tried to make them say that the second person was Nichols. Every single one of these people said absolutely not. It was a Middle Eastern type individual.
Al Husseini.
Now, listen to this. None of those 302s, none of those investigative reports have ever surfaced. So the FBI comes up with all these thousands of documents that they claim they overlooked, but the key ones where they tried to get them to say it was Nichols never surfaced.
What were they saying about the attack on Lower Manhattan?
Originally, the original report that I got was that that they had arranged for 3 attacks on the United States. 1, they were going to take down an airliner. 2, they were going to attack a federal facility in the heartland of the United States.
First one's TWA, Oklahoma City, in
Right.
reverse order, and then now.
And the third one was going to be a massive attack in Lower Manhattan. The original plan was a suitcase tactical nuclear weapon. The people that I was talking to were very, very, very credible people. And but
Okay, here's the bottom line question. You're getting intel, attack on Lower Manhattan, third big attack. What did you say? I mean, who did you talk to? I mean, we know you tried to get to the Attorney General and
I tried
others.
to get to the Attorney General. My first move was to go through some of the people I knew in Congress, to see if I could, somehow, because I was working on a two-front. It was really a two-front war. On the one hand, I wanted to get someone to listen to Jana about Oklahoma City, but on the end, what was coming up, what may be coming up. On the other hand, I was trying to get somebody to understand that Hamas has infiltrated the United States. I tried the House, I tried the Senate, I tried to get to the Department of Justice. The very people that put up roadblocks on the attack against the terrorists under Clinton are still there. And they still constitute almost like a moat between the people with information and the people who should hear the information.
So when you're talking to these Justice Department people and folks in Congress trying to give them all this information, what do they say to you?
They say, "Oh my, that's wonderful. Yeah, we'll get right back to you." I have never got a call back. When I was on a radio program out east, out in Pittsburgh, and I hinted at this. I just hinted that the FBI was sitting on information when they should have been sharing it with others, and as a result, there was a breakdown in intelligence. The next morning, I got a call from the office of the Speaker of the House, who happens to be an Illinois Republican.
Hastert.
Hastert, right. And they said, "We understand." They hadn't heard the show, but they said, "We understand you've got some information, et cetera, et cetera." I said, "Yes, I do. I would really like to share it with somebody. I have at least 2 and maybe 3 witnesses that should be subpoenaed to come out there and testify in executive session and tell you what I was talking about." "Okay, we'll get back to you." That never heard again. A couple of days later, I got a call from the Senate Intelligence Committee. "We hear that you got information, et cetera, et cetera." "Yes, I have information, and I'd be perfectly willing to bring it out to you, or I'd be perfectly willing to have my witnesses go in there and testify, but they have to be subpoenaed." "Okay, we'll get back to you." That was last week. I still haven't heard of it. I talk to people like you who are in the media, people who are really well aware of what's going on, and they cannot believe that this can happen. Strangely enough, the one people that I haven't heard from is the FBI intelligence people. Of course, if I did hear from them, I wouldn't talk to them anyhow,
Now,
because they're totally incompetent.
they got their funding tripled after the
Sure,
first...
boy, that's great. They can all get a raise, and they can all sit around and tell everybody that their informants tell them this and informants tell them that. I'm still trying, and I'm still trying to get somebody to listen to me out there and listen to my witnesses, and to at least take the material. Dana Davis had the same stuff she showed me. She walked into the FBI in Oklahoma City shortly after the bombing and said, "Here, I have all this material. It may be of some assistance to you." And they said, "We don't want it." They refused to even take it.
Just like Sudan trying to give us the names of Al-Qaeda and arrest bin Laden.
Exactly.
and they said, we don't want to do that. Well, then I think you're an investigator, you're a prosecutor, Mr. Shippers. You prosecuted the President of the United States, successfully got the indictment, but not...
prosecuted the outfit here in Chicago for 5 years.
So, you can see the motive. I see more intelligence funding. I see the cashless society with the biometrics. I see an expanded UN. I see NATO planes patrolling our skies.
Right.
UN General McKenzie on Nightline the 19th, the week after the attack. 8 days after the attack, saying we need UN troops on our borders. I see global government being empowered and a takeover of the Middle East and Central Asia by the West. I mean, I see great dividends for them by allowing this to happen.
So I hope to God you're wrong. I do. But and I can't fight with you or argue with you on it because it does seem to be heading that way.
For trying to protect their country, the heroes get crucified.
The heroes get crucified, and the bureaucrats sit out there and tell each other what a great job they're doing until another city blows up. And then they say we need more tools. They have all the tools in the world. They could have found the money years ago if they had just listened. We've got to go public because we tried to do it the right way. We tried to do it by going to the people in whom you would normally repose your confidence and trust. It didn't work. Nobody cares.
Well, we know this. The bureaucrats are going to get even more funding now.
You want more evidence of prior knowledge? The October 24th, 2001 Associated Press reported that Ari Fleischner, in a White House press briefing, admitted that George Bush and much of his cabinet were already on Cipro on September 11th, 3.5 weeks before the first traces of it popped up in Boca Raton, Florida. This is a whole nother section. We can make a whole other film on it, but it was actually proven that the anthrax was sent from Fort Detrick, Maryland, a U.S. weapons lab.
What he's talking about, and that's insane, that the Bushes were on anti-anthrax medicine 3 weeks prior to 9/11. So when people started wanting to investigate, I remember this. This is before I was aware of anything going on. I was a baby Christian. I was pro-Bush because I thought he was a Christian. But I remember I didn't have the intelligence to connect dots. I just remember hearing news stories about it, how that anthrax was showing up at congressmen's houses or offices. And like there was this big and what it was you had certain congress people wanting to investigate, really wanting to look into this instead of just jumping to the Al-Qaeda connection. And what happened? They ended up getting anthrax sent to them. That's a big threat. That's saying, hey, shut up or we're going to kill you. And they traced that anthrax back to a military base. So it had to have been government behind it. And then you tie in the fact that the Bush administration was on anti-anthrax or anthrax vaccine or whatever type medicine. I said the forbidden word there. Now my video is going to get banned or something. But this is not a medical video. This is for entertainment purposes, for research and education purposes. Just to clarify that for any of the fact checkers out there. But yeah, so it was crazy how anthrax started showing up, and all of a sudden everybody went silent. And of course Bush was on TV constantly saying, if you're not with us, you're with the terrorists, the terrorists, the terrorists, over and over and over again.
Again, to create fear. Another smoking gun. It never ends. I know the information in this documentary film is extremely painful, but the facts are the facts. Bush signed a document blocking the FBI and Defense Intelligence from stopping Al-Qaeda. They're actually suing him over it now. And realize that it's Democrats as well. The New World Order controls things at the top, and if we don't hold government responsible, they're going to use this terror to get more control over our lives. Now President Bush is seeking to restrict Capitol Hill probes. He had Dick Cheney call 6 separate congressional committees and threaten them, telling them not to investigate September 11th. And of course, the president has also activated the secret government. For the first time in history, FEMA command bunkers are brimming with National Security Agency personnel. And on top of it, Congress wasn't even advised. Neither the Senate leader nor the Speaker of the House were even told, despite the fact that they are in the direct line of ascension in the chain of power. Why isn't the president including elected officials in the continuity of government program? Back in 1999, there was a rising young star in Russia. He just stepped down as the head of the KGB, the new FSB, Vladimir Putin. He was Boris Yeltsin's top deputy. But how was he going to get into office when the polls showed the people didn't want him? Simple. He was caught blowing up 3 separate apartment buildings. That is, members of the FSB were, with explosives. Moscow police actually arrested them. Now in 2002, members of the FSB, the Federal Security Bureau, have gone public with the information, as well as explosives experts. And Vladimir Putin's best buddy, Boris Berezovsky. They seized his media empire when he reported the facts. Again, Moscow police back in 1999 actually caught members of the FSB planting the bombs in a 4th building to create fear throughout the population. Now other top government officials have gone public, saying
Putin is a mysterious figure, but because he often speaks out against the New World Order. But we got to remember controlled opposition. They control the airwaves. They control the entire system. So they're not going to allow a real threat to make any advance. So it's controlled opposition. They're only allowing information, like they allow the information they want out to get out. I don't fully understand the agenda with letting somebody, or letting like an Alex Jones have a show like that. But they're allowing it for a reason. And I'm not saying that means that Alex Jones is under their control. I mean that they have a purpose. They have a reason for allowing that. But the whole, like, ever since I was a kid, you know, we've had this image painted of Russia, that Russia's the bad guy, Russia's the bad guy, as if that's how the world really works. Like it's professional wrestling, like there's really a bad guy out to get us. That's not what it works. Go watch a movie made in the 70s called The Network, and it's about this guy. He's a news reporter who wakes up to the reality of the world, realizes that, you know, it's all a scam, and starts proclaiming that on television. And then he makes statements. He goes a little bit too far and says something that they didn't want him to say. So he gets pulled into this boardroom where like a high level Illuminati guy, big CEO or something, is chastising him. And it's an amazing speech, amazing, because whoever wrote that movie knew what's really going on in the world. And the guy basically tells him, he says, look, you think the world is still nation states. You think the world is still Russia and Iraq and America. And he's like, that's not how it works. He says the world is a conglomeration of corporations. The real governments of the world are Apple and IBM and Disney and DuPont and GE. Those are the real companies. He's like, do you really think the Russians, when they're in their government meetings, do you think they sit around and talk about Marx and Lenin and how to control the world? He's like, no. They talk about finances. They talk about economic gain. They talk about, you know, prosperity. They talk the same thing we do. It's all just, the world doesn't exist as separate nations states anymore. Excuse me. It's one large economic system. And that is the definition of fascism. And then he goes on to say, you know, everybody's going to be in this system. Everybody's and they're all going to be. Well, you have to watch the speech. I can't. It's genius. I think you can even just go and YouTube the speech itself. Just, you know, famous network speech or something like that. 1976 network. Mr. Beale. There's a couple different times where you get really good information on there. So I'd watch, watch the whole movie. It wasn't a great movie. It wasn't, but there's really good information in the movie.
That they knew the government was actually preparing to bomb buildings in 1999 as a pretext for control. And now they're actually seizing the videotape that proves it when Russian journalists as well as Russian politicians try to bring the film back into the country. So, carrying one of them terrorist manuals, are we? It's Ashcroft standing over Uncle Sam reading a book that says the Bill of Rights. Sounds like a joke, doesn't it? You're about to see the evidence. It's actually the facts. They're teaching police that if you read the Bill of Rights, you're with the terrorist. What has America come to? We're becoming more and more...
I'm actually going to show that video right now. So I'll edit this. Okay, here's that speech. think there's a cuss word in here, so forgive that.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it! Is that clear? You think you've merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back! It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, rims, rubles, pounds, and shekels.
He just defined the economic New World Order. There's no divisions. It's about profit for the Illuminati.
It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale?
You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, Minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime.
The problem with that fascist ideology is, we can all pretty much attest to this, how do corporations view employees? You're just a cog in the machine. Your feelings, your freedoms are irrelevant. You're easily replaceable. You do what you're told. You advance the system. You fit in your position. And they'll provide you with what you need to survive. But that's it. You don't have the rights to do anything. In your own company, you do what you're told. And when you can no longer do it well enough, you're replaced. In a governmental system like that, in a totalitarian system, which we're moving towards, that's why they want a cashless society, so they can control economic freedom. We will give you your rations. We'll give you enough to pay your electric bill, to pay your rent, to have your food. You just do what you're told. Don't speak out. Don't just march in line. If you violate anything, we dock your pay, we take away. And when you're too much of a threat, we just turn you off the system. You're out. You're fired. You're no longer a part of the system. You get the death sentence, so to speak. That's totalitarianism. That's what we're moving towards. And again, it's an anti-Christ system. So some of the major fundamental things are: you don't talk about Christ, you don't talk about the Bible, you don't promote Jesus, you don't promote the Bible. No prayer in public, no Bibles in public, no signs, no tracts, no preaching. It just fit in the line, just fit in this world. And they'll have an ecumenical religious aspect because they realize mankind has a desire to worship. So they'll provide a false idol, worship this way. This is the safe way. And so when you don't fit into that system, you're cut off. And it's not just that you're fired and cut off from the economic system, but you're also going to be labeled a terrorist. You'll be hunted down, persecuted, and killed.
And our children will live, Mr. Beale,
Listen to
to
this.
see that perfect world in which there's no war or famine, oppression, or brutality. One vast and ecumenical holding company for whom all men will work to serve a common profit, in which all men will hold a share of stock, all necessities provided, all anxieties tranquilized,
Pharmakia.
all boredom amused.
Entertainment.
And I have chosen you, Mr. Beale, to preach this evangel.
That's about the end of it, but I mean, he just outlined the whole thing there. All right, let's jump back into the 9/11 video. All right, here we go.
More Sovietized every single day, and our new gracious homeland leader is George W. Bush. It's a sick joke. Who really stands to gain from this terrorism? The evidence is clear. The forces of the New World Order. Now let's talk about terrorism.
Let's talk now about terrorism and about those who see violence against innocent civilians as a legitimate means, in their view, to achieve their ends.
This new law that I signed today will allow surveillance of all communications used by terrorists, including emails, the internet, and cell phones.
The answer is yes. It's a war we have to win if we're going to protect the people of this country. I think the real issue is, what do we sacrifice, what do we give up in the process? So there is going to be a continuing trade-off between security and liberty and freedom
Remember Ben
going forward
Franklin's
in the
warning.
21st century.
Security is having this discussion right now with the political leaders. And we're probably going to be asked to do some things that many people might not like, because it's going to call into question some of the freedoms that we have had.
Politics of terror. In the 20th and 21st century, inspection of any major terrorist event reveals that it is actually governments financing terrorist organizations to get a desired political outcome, to condition their population to accept higher levels of control. You've seen Hitler, Stalin, Mao, you've seen them all do it throughout the 20th century. And now in the 21st century, they're telling us it's going to be the century of terror and the century of a new world order. Look at the U.S. government. They tell us to give up our rights while our borders stay wide open, while tens of millions of people pour across our borders, come in through our ports, and land on airplanes. They have the nerve to tell American citizens that we must accept a national ID card in the name of safety. Use some common sense. The government tells us to leave the borders open even after September 11th and then treats us like slaves. Doesn't make any sense unless you're a slave master. You see, ladies and gentlemen, you have been declared the terrorist. You're looking at an FBI flyer, and they've gone out nationwide, where the FBI actually states that Christians, conservatives, gun owners are part of terrorist organizations. Defenders of the U.S. Constitution are listed as terrorists. If police encounter them, call the FBI anti-terrorism hotline immediately. Even defenders of the U.S. Constitution, people that make numerous references to the U.S. Constitution. Wait a minute, I thought police swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. Not in the new America, not with an America with a big fat K. Face the facts, America. You are the terrorist.
Abby Newman claims the checkpoint was unconstitutional. State police say the stop was legal, and Newman took it too far when she assaulted them. You can take a look at the video from the trooper's car taken here from the website Infowars.com and judge for yourself.
Notice that the media wouldn't show a full screen so no one could tell what was actually happening. We'll show you what really happened.
I need to know who you are.
No, you don't.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
I am not intoxicated. I have given you no reason to stop me, and this irritates go into town and talk to the supervisor. Sir, you cannot. You cannot. This is my...
Step out of the vehicle.
No, sir. You cannot reach into this vehicle.
Sure I can.
You
I got to know who you are.
You cannot.
I must know who you are before you can go down the road.
I have not broken any laws.
I have not accused you of breaking any laws,
You
ma'am.
just reached in my vehicle and opened this door and are...
I have no idea who you are.
The officer admits she's done nothing wrong, but she still must present her papers. All part of being guilty until proven innocent.
Authoritarianism.
I need to know who you are. Do you have a driver's license?
Police swear an oath. This stuff makes me angry. Police swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States to protect and uphold the Constitution. And part of the Constitution, one of the amendments specifically states that you have the right to be secure in your papers. You don't have to present your ID to anybody. You know, she hasn't done anything wrong. He took an oath. He swore to defend that Constitution. But many of the police and military have no idea what the Constitution is. They get a badge and they feel this dictator type attitude, and they just, you know, they're told the state is right. The state is, you know, defend the state. We can't let citizens get out of control. It'll be anarchy. You know, basically saying don't let citizens have their rights. You know, or we'll lose power. Protect our power. It's totally flipped. They're supposed to be the thin blue line between us and tyranny. That's what that's why we have police officers and military, to protect us from tyranny. They're supposed to protect us from unconstitutional government edicts and mandates. So if their police chief or whatever tells them to do this, they're supposed to say no. That's unconstitutional. You know, but it's not that way. There's a group out there called the Oath Keepers that I heard about through Officer Jack McLam. Watch everything you can find on Jack McLam. He's passed on now, but he's a hero of mine. Jack McLam. It's McLamb. Great guy. Gives you a lot of insight into how the stages work, how you work your way up in the system, because he was the most decorated police officer in Phoenix history. He was a police officer for many years there, and he was highly decorated. So he knew how that system worked. And the way he describes how that system works is the same way the judicial system or any of the systems work at all. You know, by the time they get up to high levels, they've already been corrupted. And he does just a great job. But I heard about Oath Keepers through him. And Oath Keepers are police officers and military, both active and retired, who take the oath seriously and have vowed to protect us. It makes me teary-eyed just now thinking about it, because those are real heroes. Those are the people that are saying, I will put my life on the line to protect your freedoms. And I'm not going to allow tyranny to advance against you. That's real military. That's real police. Those are great men and women, you know, that do that.
You don't have probable cause because you don't avoid...
Okay, shut your ignition off.
Pardon?
Turn your car off for me.
Why do I have to...
Because I'm asking you to turn my car off.
You are violating my United States constitutional rights. Any laws that go contrary to the United States Constitution are null and void, and I do not have to submit to them. I am not intoxicated. You have already stated you don't know who I am, so therefore...
That's the whole point. I don't know who you are. I've told you who I am. Okay, this is an approved checking detail site. Are you going to tell me who you are?
No, sir.
You're not going to tell me who you are?
You have not charged me with anything. You've not told me I've done anything wrong, and I do not owe you that, sir. Because I don't serve you, you serve me.
Okay.
Because when you take one, you take another, and before all, you know it, we can't go anywhere without our papers, and that's what this is. May I see your papers, please? You can't travel down this road, ma'am, unless you show me your papers, please. You've already told me that the stickers are in order. I wasn't traveling in undue speed. I've done nothing wrong, and this is absolutely wrong. Don't reach inside my vehicle.
I'm going to place you under arrest for obstruction of justice.
What am I obstructing, sir? Sir!
Man, I hope he got
Step
fired.
out of the car for me. Step out
You
of the car
are
for me.
physically forcing me out. No, sir, don't you touch anyone's personal belongings in this car. You're right, I recorded this conversation.
Any position of power ever again.
It is not assault.
I'll get the car.
Both of them.
Don't you officer. I'm not fighting you.
You're under arrest for resisting arrest, obstruction of justice, and assault on a police officer.
Makes me
I did not
furious.
assault you.
Assault on a
Think
police
about our
officer.
priorities in America. At a warrantless Fourth Amendment violating checkpoint, they pull over a housewife with no criminal records. When she simply doesn't want to get out of her car, they grab her and charge her with assaulting them. Let's take a closer look and you can judge for yourself what this thought criminal has done.
Sir,
Step out of the car for me. Step out
you
of the
are
car for me.
physically forcing me
Step out
out.
of the car.
No, sir, don't you touch any of my personal belongings in this car. You're right, I recorded this conversation. Yes, I did.
Resisting arrest.
It is not assault.
I'll get your car.
Don't take one
Oh,
You have the right to
makes me
remain
so
silent.
mad.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. You have the right to speak to an attorney and have your present while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire an attorney and want to be appointed to represent you without any cost to you before any questions if you desire one, you understand those rights as they've been read to you. Do you understand your rights as they've been read to you?
They're not concerned with our borders being wide open. The tens of millions of containers coming in each year that aren't even searched. No, they're worried about a woman on the side of the road and what she's reading, what she's thinking, what she's doing. This is the first generation thought police right here in the United States. This type of activity is totally un-American. These officers should be ashamed of themselves.
I want to see it right now. Strategies of submarine warfare. Hidden agenda. Call
Man, she's into this weird
What weird freedom stuff?
PowerPlay.com.
Dude, it makes me so angry. Unjust, wicked, tyrannical, authoritarian.
The Bear and the Dragon. Patriot Games.
Here's where things really get interesting as they begin to dig through her car and find what they consider subversive material.
Well, I just want to get a record started.
Yeah. You don't ask her, you just want to get the next one.
I want to get the next one. She's invoked her right to remain silent, even though she don't believe in our laws.
Even though she don't believe in our laws, no, trooper, it's you that don't know our laws. You're the one that's overthrowing our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. Our country was founded on people not being stopped like criminals, like peasants, and being searched. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause.
You wouldn't believe all the paraphernalia in here. I mean, look at this clipboard right here. Check me out. Comment upon voluntary nature of Social Security. It's a whole riot act on why you don't have to have a Social Security card to pay in the Social Security.
She's just anti-government,
yeah. She apparently belongs to some kind of a clan or something.
Militant group.
Yeah. It's Dixieland Law Journal Constitution Society. I mean, all kinds of compulsory production of documents.
Anti-government, a member of the Klan for knowing her constitutional rights, for being a member of the Constitutional Society. The FBI training of our police has really paid off.
I mean, this is...
She's definitely studied on it, hasn't she?
I'm telling you what is the truth. I wonder if I can keep that for any reason.
Well, is it evidence of a crime? If it relates back to obstruction of justice, I would say yes.
I mean, I think obstruction of justice is...
That would be the appropriate charge.
Good.
Yeah. And that relates to it. That's why she did it. I mean,
Man, I really hope they got
She may
fired.
be the one that would want to bring that to court. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Tired of
It'd probably be fine reading, but
they
I'm not
won't.
sure if I can seize it or not.
Yeah. I know.
I don't know that
system.
this is illegal.
Exactly.
It's the exact
I think she
opposite
can read it
of
all.
what's supposed to be.
I think she can read it all she wants to.
Now this, if they've actually outlawed that is, and I think they have.
Abby Newman was vindicated by a jury of her peers and found not guilty of assault on a royal police officer and of resisting arrest. But they still tried to get her for simply invoking her constitutional rights. You heard them digging through her goods. Oh, look at Pocket Constitution. What are we going to do? And then look at this poor guy. This is one of my listeners. They pulled him over. The SWAT team attacked him. He was unarmed. They released a police dog on him and then held up 2 jumper cables on the news and said, look, pipe bombs. Of course, a month later, they admitted that all the charges were false, but that didn't stop them from having a little fun, a little manhunt. There's nothing like it here in the new Rome. America, it's time to wake up to what's happening. We're being treated like animals. Farrell Montgomery, one of my radio listeners, just pulled over, attacked for no reason, shot with 2 taser guns, and a dog attacked him. And then here's the Register Herald. Big newspaper in West Virginia. Christians a hate group. They found out the FBI and law enforcement schools across the state, and it's going on around the country, are teaching them that Christians, period, are hate criminals, are part of a terrorist group if they believe in a second coming of Christ. And all this comes right out of the Project Megiddo report, where they list homeschoolers, gun owners, anybody that cares about freedom, anyone that believes in Jesus Christ, anyone that believes in a second coming. Again, where did the First Amendment go? Anyone that discusses a New World Order conspiracy theory. Well, you've heard world leaders say a New World Order throughout this documentary. Anyone that talks about a New World Order takeover. The evidence is clear. If you resist the New World Order takeover, you're being demonized as a hate criminal. Look, it lists homeschoolers as terrorists. Remember, if you say New World Order, you're a terrorist.
It is a big idea, a new world order. Out of these troubled times, our 5th objective, a new world order can emerge. Now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
President George Bush has talked time and time again about a new world order. And this is the best chance to begin to establish the new world order.
One of my listeners in Missouri, a patriotic firefighter, sent us this footage of a FEMA commando demonizing the founding fathers and Christians to a group of police and firefighters. What are Christians and patriots? The new Jews?
You're damn right, because think about the Christians, okay? Do you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior? No. What did they do? They took your head off. They beheaded you if you didn't accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. See, this is reality.
What a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, they're terrorists, but the bottom line is to them, they are not. Now, why is that important to understand? Because they are as committed to their cause and to their way of life as you are yours. And they see you as being wrong. That's very different. When people are passionate about what they believe in, they become a very difficult enemy to beat. Who was the first terrorist organization in the United States? Who? Founding Fathers. You mean Thomas Jefferson? Oh, yeah. You mean George Washington? Oh, yeah. Paul Revere? Yeah. These guys right here.
What a bunch of nonsense they're teaching
these people. Did they try to scare people?
Man.
Oh, yeah. They tried to intimidate the British. Did they use acts of violence?
We're 20 years deeper into this now.
Were involved in acts of terrorism against British officials because they systematically had British officials assassinated. The guys who we call our founding fathers, George Washington, Mr. Honest, who cut down the cherry tree and admitted it, is the same guy who signed death orders, if you will, on members of the British government, the British Crown, who they wanted to eliminate because politically they had influence in certain pockets of the United States, at that time the 13 colonies, and they wanted to divide and conquer. They may get a whole lot of civilians, and hey, I'm going to be honest with you, okay? If they killed 10,000 civilians tomorrow with a biological agent, that's too bad for them.
Yeah, so what if they killed 10,000 civilians? You know how these patriots are. They're always killing civilians. So what? We've just got to take care of ourselves. Talk about demonization. If anybody's going to kill 10,000 civilians, it's the feds. All the evidence shows it's the feds killing people. 3,000 plus at the World Trade Center and Pentagon. Here's Bush signing the USA Patriot Act that literally eviscerated the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Section 213 delays warrants. It means they can sneak in your house for any reason, take whatever they want, and never even tell you they were there. But you're like, oh, that's okay. There's a sunset clause. Well, if you look at that subsection, all of the key areas that violate your constitutional rights, there are no sunset provisions. Out of 1,016 sections, 802 has to be the most frightening. You see, the definition of domestic terrorism is anyone that is involved in acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws of the United States or of any state. Under their definition, jaywalking is now a terrorist action. This is an absolute outrage. The people that pass this legislation, in truth, are the real terrorists, the real criminals engaging in sedition against our constitutional republic. Congressman Ron.
We're going to stop there. All right, so that's what I got for you guys tonight. Seeing stuff like that, it makes me so angry. You know, injustice, wickedness, it makes your blood boil. And I know that I just got done telling you guys, you know, that we shouldn't fear this stuff, like we were told ahead of time. So at the same time, you know, it shouldn't make us angry, or maybe it should, I don't know, but I get worried a lot of times because when you look into this stuff a lot, it can make you furious, which is, I think, what the issue with Alex Jones is he spent 20 years looking at this, and he's a very angry man. He's just, and you know, I don't know if he's born again, but the anger that boils up in you when you see this, when you see wickedness, when you see them playing with people's lives, when you see them being tyrants, and just dictating over people like they're special, like they have power, like you're nothing, you're just an ant. Or more recently, when you start looking at them with the sex trade stuff and the Epstein Island stuff, and you know, you look into that too much, you just start to get angry. And I often think about that Bible verse that says, because evil abounds, the love of many will grow cold. And we are commanded to love. We're to love our enemies. We're to pray for those who persecute us. We're not to return spite for spite. You know, we're supposed to turn the other cheek. We're going to be persecuted. We're not to take up arms. You know, we're not to fight back. We're to lay down our lives. You know, we're speak the truth and let the chips fall where they may. The Lord's in control. They're going to hurt us. They're going to kill us. But, you know, they don't know what they're doing. They're just blind, ignorant, foolish people, you know, just running blindly towards a cliff. And so we're not supposed to get angry at them. I feel like we can be angry at the injustice, but we have to turn that over to the Lord as well. He's in control. You know, the Lord laughs at them. He has all this under control. So I don't want my love to grow cold. You know, when you start looking into the face of evil, that's your heart starts to just get furious, and you tend to start forgetting about love. You start wanting people executed. You start wanting vengeance. You start wanting justice. You start wanting to see them put down. And the Psalms talks about that, how I forget what it is, 107 or 117 or something like that. Somewhere, I think it has a 107 maybe it is, but it talks about, the psalmist is talking about how he saw the injustices. He saw evil people prospering, and he was just like, "What? How can this be?" He despaired of his life, and then he went to the house of God, and he remembered, oh yeah, the Lord is going to get them in the end. He set them in slippery places. Justice will be served in the end. And so we have to remember that. And I have a hard time doing that when you look into the face of it. But God will do justly. He is in control. There will be accountability in the end. We may not see it in this lifetime, but it's going to happen. People are going to be held accountable for their wickedness. There will be justice. Ultimately, God is going to do right. And so we hope in that, we trust in that. And but like I say, it's hard to do when you're looking into the face of it. So as you're looking into these evil things, we have to do like the psalmist does and go to the house of God, go to worship, go to praise, and remember God is sovereign. God is in control. God is just. God is good. He's going to do justly. He's going to do what's right. But anyways, yeah, so that's what I got for you guys tonight. Lord willing, we'll pick up at that 1:30 mark next time. We still have an hour and 19 minutes. Maybe we can get through it. in one shot? We should be able to. But we'll see. All right. I appreciate you guys watching. I love you, and we'll talk to you next time.